following is a paid program. The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Entercom Communications, its sponsors, or affiliates.
Good morning. Welcome to the Hardcore Mortgage Real Estate Business Show brought to you by Capital Mortgage Funding. I'm your host, Harvey Freed. We've got a great panel today. I hear Harry Glanz. He's on the Zoomcast. Along with Becky Alley. Good morning, Becky.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
All right. Hey, Becky, thanks for bringing Brian DellaPella on. Hey, Brian, what's going on? Top real estate agent all over Southeast Michigan.
All right. Yep.
Great to have you back, Brian. Hey, Brian, this is a lot different compared to when we had you in the studio earlier in the year, but nonetheless, what a great real estate year. I know you're enjoying the business all year long. It's fun to stay busy. It makes the days go by really quickly. A little bit of stress out there. And Brian, just to have you back and talk about a little things just to start off the show, 248-539-9797. Tell me just a little bit about your vibe, what's going on in your business world.
Right now it's just, staying busy. A lot of buyers right now, multiple offer situations, exciting, working with Becky a lot, getting the pre-approvals out there. Listings are flying off the market when they're coming. I have a listing appointment after this. So just staying busy, got a pregnant wife, got to pay the, so I'm excited just to see the market, keep it going. And, just the way it's been been fun.
Becky.
Well, congratulations to your little baby on the way. That's super cool. And something I want to touch on real quick is Brian, you can't find a nicer person than Brian DellaPella. Let's just get that out of the way. So he is so nice. He's so kind. And he's also not afraid to get involved with his clients. So we talk a lot about when you're buying a house, you want to be prepared. You want to get proper pre-approval. You want to get the documents into the lenders as quickly as possible. I know that if I'm having a hard time, he takes responsibility for his buyers full-heartedly. So if I'm talking to him and I'm like, listen, we're trying to meet this deadline. I'm missing a page of a bank statement. He literally will hang up the phone with me and take that weight on his shoulders versus putting it just on mine and make sure that he is throwing his clients over the finish line and getting on them to make sure that they are doing their due diligence to get us what we need. Because obviously, like he was saying, it's very busy. It's very competitive. And if you don't have your ducks in a row, you're going to delay the transaction, which could implode on everything because the sellers are going to be very demanding right now in this kind of market.
Yeah, Brian, God bless this marketplace. It's so busy right now. The nonstop buyers are coming out, but they half the buyers aren't prepared because they're excited. They might have just got married. Maybe they don't teach it in school. We're going to talk about that a little bit today and how it affects some of the education involved in this. But yeah, about half the buyers are ready to go and half aren't. So we really got to move those buyers where they're in a position to make these really competitive offers.
Yeah, 100%. And that's when, like Becky was saying, there's other agents out there too who are great buyers agents and just great agents in general. But you really have to have that agent who's going to sit you down, do the buyer consultation with you, and just really let you know how the market is. It's not the market where you can have 5 listings you want to see and sleep on them for 24 hours and decide which one. You really have to know right away. If you got that gut feeling walking in, this is the one, let's do it. Let's go for it. And it's just having an advocate on their side. And that's the market that we're in right now. If you're a new buyer and you don't have that advocate for you as the buyer's agent, as the mortgage lender who's going to call the listing agent and say, listen, we can get this done. I think that's the biggest thing missing with some buyers right now, and why they're missing out on a lot of offers is because they're just not informed and schooled before, they start really going out to look. And so, there's a lot that goes into it, but like Becky was saying, just having an agent, a mortgage lender, and just a team working together, it's going to help. It's really going to help you get that offer accepted. And for the buyers who are ready to go, that's just something they have to remember.
Yeah. Hey, Harvey and Becky, 2 words for Brian DellaPella. 2 words, because he has a 2-word last name. 2 words for Brian DellaPella. Extremely refreshing. He's an advocate in a positive way. He's part of the solution, not getting in the way of the transaction as part of the problem. So Brian DellaPella, you are extremely refreshing, and we appreciate that. Also, this weekend, beautiful outside. What's going to happen this weekend? The weather is phenomenal. You know how many houses are going to sell this weekend, everybody?
A lot.
A lot of houses are going to sell this weekend. All the open houses, all the offers that people looked at through open house on Friday, today, and tomorrow, all the offers are going to be rolling in because the market is still extremely busy right now. We can't say it. So he's extremely refreshing. Market is extremely busy, and we have Brian DellaPella. So I feel good about today, everybody.
On a side note, I want everyone to know that, like, literally when we knew that Brian was coming on the show, we literally just walk around the office saying, Brian DellaPella, just because it just rolls off the tongue. We love it.
There you go. It's a great name in real estate. Hey, we're going to
start hanging out at your office every day.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Brian, you can call.
Go a little bit.
248-539-9797. We got open lines. Again, you can always send us a ticket text also at the same number, 248-539-9797. Capital Mortgage sponsors our program, 1-800-LOW-RATE, the best mortgage banker. So important to get that strong approval letter. And we break down a transaction in today's show, which I think is really important for a lot of first-time home buyers out there or families, Becky, who haven't bought a house in the last 10 years or so, 11 years. 2009 brought a lot of changes to the marketplace. Last week, I don't know if I touched on it, how way back in the day, it doesn't seem that long ago, where some of the documentation was entirely different. So nowadays we have these initial closing disclosures. We're actually sending disclosures to clients with not necessarily the correct numbers and asking them to go ahead and sign their name. So even in the paperwork, the documents on our side, quite a bit of knowledge, and you need to know what you're signing. And really, you got to sort of trust that lender because there's so many new documents involved.
Okay, so what we're talking about is there's timing and there's compliance disclosures. And when you're in the middle of a transaction, because, you know, as a lender institution, there was some, let's just say, shady individuals out there were there at the last minute dropping the Hiroshima bomb on you and your numbers were completely different. Okay, those days are long gone. You have to have proper disclosure time and proper ample time to review your disclosure. So, you know, let's just say we're rushing for closing, and I actually was on the phone with someone at 9 o'clock last night. We're trying to meet a 10:15 deadline, do or die kind of thing. Well, the initial closing disclosure has to be sent 3 days before that closing. So I didn't see any responses. So I'm calling them at 9, 10 o'clock at night to get their attention, because if they don't sign it tonight, I lost a business day. On top of that, there's a holiday on Monday. So these are the things that we have to be constantly aware of. So there's got a lot of moving parts on the lending side, and our job and as the lender is to bring these things to attention, because there's never a dull moment. So you have to sign these disclosures ahead of time, at least 3 days before closing. And it's very important that we do our due diligence to make sure we're reviewing these numbers for the accuracy, because that would be the last time that we could actually make any changes, whether you want to make it to the rate, whether you want to decide you want to maybe pay some points down. In those moments, that is the last time we can make some changes, or we might be past the point and we can't make any more changes. So depending on what the situation is. So it's very important that we have these multiple conversations leading up to this, so that way we don't, have something blow up in our face at the last minute.
Becky, you said it. A lot of things going on. Harry,
Hey, Harv, I want to call a 20-second timeout on that too, and let everybody know that when you say they're not the correct numbers going out on an initial closing disclosure or any type of compliance document, no, they are the correct numbers at that time. Okay, so we are, as Becky said, we're surrounded by dates that we have to meet. So if we send out an initial disclosure and it has numbers on it, those aren't the exact numbers that are going to be on the closing document. Those are the numbers at the time. For example, payoff numbers. Payoff numbers are going to come down the road. So when we pay it on the day that we pay it off, all the correct per diem interest, using a lot of crazy terms here now, are correct. Okay, so what I'm telling everybody is this, is that we have to send out documents, like Becky said, within a certain time frame. You've got to sign the initial documents and get them back because they're time sensitive. The only documents that are written in stone are the documents that when you sit down or do a virtual closing, those are the documents that the numbers are really transmitted on, that are going to be the final numbers. Throughout your 30 days or 35 days, or in Harvey's case, 129 days of a transaction, that was a dig there, right, Becky?
We got
Anyways, they're going to change. The numbers are going to change until we lock it in with our closing department. Just sign the disclosures.
You got it. Hey, Harry, it's a great way to wrap up the first segment of the day. There's a lot of information out there. We're trying to really feed your knowledge bank, and that's the key, having some confidence as you move forward. 1-800-LOW-RATE Capital Mortgage Funding. We urge you to get that knowledge bank behind you. We're going to set you up with Brian DellaPella and all these great real estate agents. It's time to buy a house. When we come back, we'll show you how.
Hi, Harry Glantz and Dan Burke from Capital Mortgage Funding. Over 30 years in the mortgage banking industry, hundreds of thousands of families served. Let us serve you. Capital Mortgage Funding, 1-800-LOW-RATE, the best mortgage banker.
All righty, welcome back to the show. We give you 1 hour, the hardcore mortgage real estate business show. Again, brought to you by Capital Mortgage Funding. We are powered by Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation, NMLS 2289, equal housing lender. You can find us all over the country, but right here, capital mortgage funding in your own backyard at 1-800 low rate. You're going to save money on closing costs, get a great interest rate. But more importantly, as we continue to discuss, our platform for several years on this show is consumer advocacy, educating our buyers. And as we're talking about all sorts of different things today, we were starting to Becky, go into the numbers, some of the documents that you're signing, but how important it is really to enjoy the experience. And I think let's put a nice little twist on our morning show here. And boy, Brian, so much fun, and all the great families out there taking advantage of not only the low interest rates, but wow, what a great time here with sort of the pandemic. Families are getting closer and hanging out in their new backyards together, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think the pandemic, the one thing it did for real estate was it showed families they need a bigger house, they need more space.
I think we lost Brian.
We got Brian's volume up. All right, go ahead, Brian.
I think the pandemic, what it did for a lot of families was it showed.
Nope, we lost him. All right, hey, we'll bring Brian. We're going to bring the volume back up. We'll try to something different here. Hey, Becky, we were talking about just diving into some of the fun stuff. And again, sure, we're in the trenches. Hey, it's our chosen careers where it's a lot of fun to be involved with so many different families. But this pandemic has brought on some really interesting things this year. Not only the volume going through the roof, but some of these great memories and families really moving into some of these wonderful homes. So I always like to put that nice twist on it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, listen, everyone's world got flipped upside down. I literally went from being an office person to like working from home to now my kids are like on my lap 24/7. I'm trying to be a professional with my dogs barking in the background and everyone getting ice every 3 seconds. It sounds like they literally were sitting on my lap, but we had some great times. I mean, like during the pandemic, I feel like I know I'm not making light of it because I know it was very serious. Don't get me wrong. But when we were in quarantine, like we really spent a lot of time, like we played board games every night and we really kind of evaluated our space too, like everyone else did. And it was almost like that, like, should we stay or should we go? And what are we going to use, how we're going to utilize these space? Because it kind of made you look, reflect on are we really using our space properly in our homes? And it was great spending time with the kids and playing Clue every night. We would like come up with different British accents and all that. But now that these kids are in school and, they're back to school full time, but like my sister's kids, they started off the first 5 weeks virtual. So my sister literally converted her basement, rearranged everything to make a classroom in, downstairs in her home because that was the best space for her. And I feel like there's just been a lot of people that had, we talk about it quite a bit, but you have to really, really evaluate it. And do you want to pull cash out to make these renovations or is it not worth it? And do you want to just move on and find that house that checks all those boxes? And that's when someone like Brian comes in, because I know he probably has these conversations 88 times a day.
Hey, Brian, how about that inventory out there? Tell us all about it.
Oh, it's a great seller's market right now. Low inventory. Becky kind of hit the nail on the head. A lot of these families realized, oh, we need more space. We need more of this. We need more of that. And they went out there. And I mean, there's a lot of buyers out there, not a lot of inventory on the market. We talked about it earlier. When you're going in for an offer, you're definitely probably going to go up against multiple situations, multiple offer situations. And it's just one of those things where you just have to know what you want and you got to go for it. There's not many houses out there. So when you do find the one, get it. And a lot of these families realize that, we want the bigger backyard. We want the finished garage to convert to a classroom instead of the basement. So we have that space to live in. We want a walkout patio so we don't have to walk around the front door to the backyard.
There you go. That's fun.
That people realized. And for that reason, once, when a house comes up that has that thing, it's getting jumped on.
So what do you say to also, like the buyers that they get frustrated sometimes? Like if they missed out, right? They're like, oh man, I'm never going to get one, right? Like you got to reel them back in, right? So like, I don't feel like, granted you're in the trenches by me. I feel like your offers, you got to write a good offer up front almost.
You have to write a good offer up front. And right now the biggest thing, and you see it a lot, is the escalation clause, the appraisal guarantees. But you really have to talk to your buyers before that first offer, because you don't want to miss out on an offer for them and say, well, we can do this the next time. Like, why couldn't we do it the first time? So that's right. Really educating them and letting them know we can do an escalation clause, but we have to write an appraisal guarantee with it because, it's just going to counter, it's not going to work without it. But going back to them missing out on a house, sometimes there's nothing you can do. Sometimes the people the cash to pull out. They have the higher appraisal guarantee because you only have so much money for closing. But that's when you go back and you sit down with your buyer and just say, let's go over your funds again. What can we do for the next offer?
Right on.
Should we wait a little bit, save up a little more money for closing, for appraisal guarantees, whatever you want to do to get that house? But it's just going back and really looking at the numbers hard with them and just telling them this is what you can do to put in the strongest offer. Because as agents and bankers, we can only do so much. We can write it, we can submit the letters, we can do everything for them. But at the end of the day, they're the ones with the cash, they're the ones with the numbers, and we have to work with what they're working with.
Yeah. Hey, Brian, you walk a fine line. The fine line that you walk is that when you meet somebody and you say to them, hey, listen, you've got to get a pre-approval. You got to call Becky and get a pre-approval. And then you have to ask them the question that is the toughest question to ask somebody. Do you have the money for the transaction? Okay, so you have to start in reverse. You have to say to somebody, listen, I know you're looking at that $250,000 house. Do you have the down payment that you can afford? I know everybody can make the monthly payment, but do you have the funds enough to put into the transaction? You have a tough road to hoe there. You're walking a fine line. You don't want to get too involved in their business, but you have to be involved in their business, correct?
Correct. And the biggest thing I can say is be honest with your agent and upfront, because the mortgage lender is going to find out. We don't have access to that information, but be honest with your agent upfront. If you can afford $800 a month, that's fine. Tell us that. Don't tell us you can afford $1,600, because once that pre-approval comes and the house you love, you can't afford it. We're catching a lot of the blame, but you just have to be honest and don't be ashamed. And whatever you have, and it's a great time to buy and get a house. And, in a few years, move on if you want to, but you got to be honest up front about your numbers. And I feel like a lot of people don't want to disclose that up front, or they're kind of iffy about it. But, if you're renting, what you can afford up front. If you want to buy a house, you already know you have a budget set for your rent. So, just keep a budget for your mortgage, and, it's divulge that information to your agent, because we're here to help you as much as the lender and anybody else is.
Yeah, have fun with it too. Anyone out there hunting for a house knows that the bidding wars are no longer the exception. It's definitely all the norm. Forget about the days of going in there and thinking you're coming in at $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 off that listed price. Again, it's already been, the house is out. And Brian, you're going on a listing appointment today, so obviously the people have knowledge of what's going on in the marketplace. These are all-time highs, and you're going to set something up that's going to be very reasonable based on what their needs are. And the motivation of the seller is so key. But again, timing, we're talking about a lot of things when you're selling a house and buying a house. If the sellers need to stay in the house for another 60 or 80 or 90 days, then you guys can set that up all in the purchase agreement. Again, an extended closing date, and then another extended 60 days of occupancy. So families out that are buying new construction, make sure you get a top agent involved in your transaction. You can really write up your purchase agreement to make sure that all parties are really happy with the flow and the time, because nowadays, Brian, as we talked about, there's no inventory. So if you're selling your house, you got to have a place to go, and that could take a few months also.
Yeah, and that's why it's such a good time to list your house right now if you're thinking about it, because you're going to have the advantage to get that, free 30 and then an extra 30 days occupancy, whatever you need. It's just, there's such an advantage to listing right now because there's so many desperate buyers, and not desperate and they'll buy anything, but they want to find the right house, and your house is right for somebody. And so getting that occupancy, getting that extended closing date, it's not going to be a problem right now. It really will not be.
Becky?
Well, I think you touched on so many actually really important things. Part of it is like, when Brian was talking about knowing what you can afford in advance and being in a position to make the best offer. That starts with, the conversation that you're also going to have with the lending institution. So it's a team that you literally are forming around you, because it's not you against us. We're literally all as one cohesive unit. And when we have those conversations, sure, on paper, you might be able to afford $1,600. That sounds really cool, but it doesn't mean that fits in your budget realistically. So I like to say you want to be married to your house, or your spouse, not your house. And I have those conversations all the time. They're like, well, what's my max? And we're going to have those conversations because it's important for you to know what your max is and visualize that and see what it looks like as a dollar price point. So that way Brian knows, okay, I have the full authorization to go in there and be aggressive up to this point, because this is the max that they feel comfortable with as far as what you have to bring to closing and the monthly payment, because that's the most important. It's not so much the mortgage payments that people can't afford, it's how much money it's their assets. It's coming up with that down payment. How are we going to work around that? That's really the majority of the biggest issue I see. It's not the payment, it's the cash.
Becky, a lot of times we come into some really borderline transactions. We're trying to put a lot of families into these conventional mortgages when really they're an FHA borrower, maybe a little bit lower credit score, lack of funds, lack of savings, lack of credit history. You definitely have to sit down with that mortgage professional. So many families trying to do this online. You got to stop that nonsense. I've met you buyers out there. You need more information, more knowledge, and you're going to feel a little bit more comfortable about your purchase. 248-539-9797. We come back. More on real estate buying and selling.
Hi, Harry Glantz and Dan Burke from Capital Mortgage Funding. Over 30 years in the mortgage banking industry, hundreds of thousands of families served. Let us serve you. Capital Mortgage Funding, 1-800-LOW-RATE, the best mortgage banker.
Just warming things up here. 9:30. It's a hardcore mortgage show brought to you by Capital Mortgage Funding, 1-800-LOW-RATE, the best mortgage banker. Got tons of sports coming up right after. Pat Caputo at 10 o'clock. Sports and social commentary. 11:30. We got the pregame. Unbelievable. Michigan, Ohio State, 1971. Jansen and his group putting together unbelievable broadcast on that. Keep it here on 97.1 The Ticket. The game's going to be awesome. Again, the replay of the Michigan-Ohio State game 1971. I was only a little lad there. I don't remember it, and I'm looking forward to it. We're going to give you still another 30 minutes of mortgage and real estate talk. Brian DellaPella with River Oaks Realty joining us all morning long here with Becky Alley, Harry Glanz. And if you want to join the show, 248-539-9797. Demand for housing has been just gangbusters. The pandemic was really interesting, and it still continues to lay a lot of questions out as we got so much going on. Becky, we got some stimulus check conversation coming up. The path of this pandemic is really unknown what it's going to do to the economy moving forward. Presidential election in less than 30 days. Man, Becky, we don't know what's going on, but we know people are going to continue to buy housing because there's just a lack of interest. Who wants to pay your landlord rent anymore? Nobody.
No, I mean, why would you want to do that? Especially with the rates being as low as they are, you'd be a fool not to take advantage of it if you're in that position to do so. I mean, you're literally looking at, in some cases, your payment is $200 less than what it would have been 2 years ago. I mean, so it's literally a lot of purchase power that you have. So if you're paying $1,000 in rent right now, or $1,200, because I have my future sister-in-law, like, she's literally been looking at houses and she can't find anything that's less than $1,200 to rent. And she's thinking, why would I do that when I can buy my own home and my payment would be like less than that on a $250,000 house, depending on what the taxes are. I mean, so if you're in a position to rent, you need to start the conversation. You need to reach out. We'll get you hooked up with someone like Brian, because why not line your own pockets with equity? Even if it's just you have it for a year and you sell it, chances are you probably could make a decent profit margin. Granted, I can't tell the future, but one would hope that in the situation that we have been in, where it's been on an upward incline the last several years, where equity is there, I say put it in your own pocket.
Brian.
Yeah.
Days on the market, 13. I'm sorry, Brian, let me set you up. Days on the market down to 13 days. How do we negotiate? I mean, man, like you said, sometimes you just don't get that house, but several variables when you are making that offer. And again, who wants to pay rent, Brian? Nobody.
No, and I think Becky said it. We touched on it earlier, knowing your budget. And if you're paying $1,200 a month in rent, you are more than likely going to pay less for a mortgage and own that house and have the equity. We cannot forecast the future. That's not our job. We just can't do it. But the way it's been going, it's just going up, and you're going to be able to sell that house, break even, make a little more depending on what you do to it, maybe. But yeah, renting a house right now, it's for some people, and I can't tell them not to, but you are going to get such a low interest rate right now. You call Becky, you get a low interest rate, you find that house. And I mean, if you have a lease right now and you're 6 months out, 3 months out, and you're perfect. That's the occupancy we were talking about. There it is. So there's a way to sweeten your offer. So if you're out there and you're leasing and you're thinking about buying, you have so much buying power and you just don't know it yet because you haven't talked to the right person, or you just haven't really put your foot in the water yet to do it. But get out there and do it.
Yeah, like, it's always so refreshing. I mean, because like you have that foresight, like you're already looking, down the road on, like, when you're talking to your clients, the fact that you even mentioned, like, hey, you're in a rent, like a lease contract. Well, this is how we can get you out of it without you having to pay for it. I mean, there's so many creative ways where so many people think that they can't buy when they really can. And the only way to answer those questions is to start the conversation. The sooner you start the conversation, the more we can just be like, listen, like, this is really what you can do. And you can actually start tomorrow. And people are like, oh my gosh, I had no idea, because they talked to their brother's cousin, sister's uncle that bought a house 10 years ago, and it was a totally different situation. And I mean, there's a lot of things that are going in. New buyers, whether you're new or it's your 10th time buying a home, there's a lot of things that are in your favor right now. And it's time to capitalize on it, because we're here to help you and we're here to get you in the best house. Even with the inventory low, we're going to put you in a competitive spot, so that way you are going to stand out above everyone else's offers.
Yeah, Brian, I like that. 4 to 6 months out, definitely tightening up your financial situation. You can work on your credit too. That gives you time to work on a couple different credit accounts that could pop up. If you want to move your credit score from the low 700s into the higher 700s, that can help you with a little bit better interest rate, or maybe a little lower closing costs. There's no doubt better credit will set you up, and especially on a refinance transaction. For all the families out there doing the cash out transactions, definitely work on your credit score. Harry, you're jumping in.
No, I wasn't jumping in. I was just saying hi to you, Harvey. Anyways, what I have to tell you guys is Brian and Becky are very strong, at getting people ready for the transaction. Right now, where time is of the essence, you just can't be ready to jump in when you see a house that goes on the market. You're already done at that point in time. Okay, you've already lost that house because you weren't ready previously the week before, the 2 weeks before, the 3 weeks before to do all the groundwork. So Brian and Becky have to get people ready. So when Brian's out there looking for houses, he sees a new listing coming up, he can take you right in and make that offer knowing that you're already pre-approved. You can't wait anymore to start doing your homework. Those days are over. Look at Harvey, when you were in school, maybe you did homework, maybe you did it the night before, but not now in this mortgage, in the mortgage world and real estate world right now. You have to do your homework up front. And then when Brian's out looking at houses for you and he sees a new listing coming up, he can jump on it for you right then and there, knowing he's got a pre-approval from Becky in his hand. That's just the way it works now, guys. You cannot wait any longer to start the research and homework process.
Yeah, 4 to 6 months out. I like that. Hey, Brian, putting anything with any contingencies, any offers with contingencies can scare people away. However, you can also use those contingencies, so like we've been talking about all morning here, to set up the time frame. Brian, you said also a lot of sellers are totally asking for 30 days after closing, and that's just because they can't find another place and they need to go find a place to buy.
Right. Yeah. A lot of these houses up are, contingent on seller finding home of choice is what they call it. And there's just not a lot out there. So they're going to list their house. If it's nice, right now in this market, it's going to sell if it's priced right. And they really have to get out there, and their agent has to do the due diligence for them to say, okay, before you list this house, let's make sure you call back and get that pre-approval, get your finances in order.
Right.
What do you have? Because this house is going to sell. We can get so many, and then buyers writing contingent offers. It's agents don't get any offer. They'll look at every offer that gets sent in. It's just, there's other things you can do to sweeten the pot. But yeah, I mean, there's contingencies for buyers and sellers right now. It's just the market. But, you really, for a strong buyer right now, contingencies just aren't going to work. But that's where, your lender and your agent come in and just kind of talk to you beforehand. And if you have to have contingencies, then we work around it and we find a plan that works for the seller and the buyer.
Hey, Brian, tell us about some inspections that you've worked around, some things. I mean, when people are buying houses, they're financing, we're trying to save them money, get them into the house, usually as minimal down so that they can use the other funds they have to fix up the house. Tell me a little bit about some of the inspection things that have popped up, maybe a little heads up to some of the buyers out there. I know of one there's an electrical panel that was brand new and someone might have looked at it that way. However, the wiring was all the old cloth wiring. So could you give me one or two examples out there of things that, that your inspector even found that, we're like, hey, let's negotiate this. Let's find out a little more.
Yeah. I mean, there's little things, like fireplaces being clean, chimneys beep, all the way to roofs needed to be replaced. They won't pass FHA because they'll call out the roof or VA. So there's a lot of, but that's where the buyer comes in and just says, hey, we need you to help with this, but we can do this for you. It's a give and take on both sides, but there's definitely, I had one a few weeks ago where the electrical panel you said it was changed. It wasn't grounded to the house. One of the 2x4s in the attic was a little rotted. So they wanted to add new 2x4s to stud it. The seller, they were giving them occupancy already. So the seller said, yeah, I'll do it. So the sweeter the deal is going in, the nicer the sellers are going to be to the buyers.
Yeah, I like that.
Plus, at that point, they're invested. They're invested
Right.
in that transaction. So they're like, let's just get this over with because we got to find our house. I mean, so it's like you got to, if you can see it out in the beginning, no one knows what the inspection is going to uncover. And that's why we're such advocates of do not waive it. At the same time, if there's major issues with the house that we don't think FHA is going to, go through. So you got to talk to the lender. Hey, can we go conventional? But conventional isn't going to the appraiser of a conventional mortgage. That doesn't mean they're not going to cite a health and safety concern on an appraisal because there might be mold in the house, or like you said, the electrical panel. If they see that they feel it's a health and safety, even a conventional appraiser is going to say, hey, you need to fix these things. And, some people don't understand that because they think conventional is as is, and you don't have to do those kinds of things. But it really is going to be the appraiser and the underwriter's discretion to feel that this house, because ultimately, I think about it, the lender, we're literally in most cases the 95% investor of your home, and you've only contributed 5%. So of course, we as your largest investor want to make sure that you have a house that is in perfect condition should, God forbid, something happen.
Yeah,
Or the best
inspections,
condition.
definitely. You can get a video, you can call your inspector, you can get a booklet of what he's going to be filling out for you, the cost involved, review a sample report. Hey, it's a big deal. You're buying a house. Costly repairs are scary. The uncostly ones aren't too scary. You can negotiate them and, of course, get that house of your dreams. When we come back, 248-539-9797, all of your calls.
Hi, Harry Glantz and Dan Burke from Capital Mortgage Funding. Over 30 years in the mortgage banking industry, hundreds of thousands of families served. Let us serve you. Capital Mortgage Funding, 1-800-LOW-RATE, the best mortgage banker.
What a gorgeous day outside, going up to 72 degrees. The sun's shining until about noon. Hopefully it'll hang in there a little bit longer, and still a nice weekend tomorrow, 64 degrees and some clouds, but not too bad. Enjoy your fall. Get out there. Got lots of football coming up. Again, we got that Michigan Ohio State replay here on 97.1 starting at 11:30. Pack a poodle with sports. A lot of interesting things and fun stuff going out there in the sports world. Tampa Bay beating up on the Yankees, and they will move on to the semis now, almost with a shot to move towards the World Series. We're going to have some Tiger baseball coming up like that really soon here. So again, hang in there if you're a Detroit sports fan. And again, we've got Brian DellaPella on from River Oaks Realty. Brian, always fun to have you on talking about purchasing houses, and always off the air. We always discuss little different things about purchases and transactions, just so many things going on. At the end of the day, I always enjoy the closings. I wish there was more of the old-fashioned closings, Becky, where we could actually always attend the closings and everyone was hugging it out. No more hugs anymore, but definitely a lot of high fives and as we talked about earlier, some really great families getting some great opportunities, moving into some new subdivisions, and families really taking advantage of these low interest rates.
Yeah, I mean, like we talk about all the time. I mean, it's a great market, and the pandemic, obviously, it has had a huge, I mean, our world has been flipped on this access. I mean, it's totally different, and people are acting cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs sometimes, but we got to deal with it because we're all in this together, and there's no protocol, nor do we know what's going to happen, or is there going to be a second, wave, come the winter time? Like, is it going to manifest into something larger, bigger? We don't know. We have an election coming up. I mean, so the important thing is that we kind of just stay focused. Everyone doesn't lose their heads and just realize that we're all in it together, especially when you have a team around you when you're buying a house. It can be very emotional. People fall in love with homes before they're strictly theirs. And you got to make sure you're listening to our advice. You have to have a job. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about things that you don't want to do. And we can kind of go round robin.
Yeah.
You have to have a job. Okay, this is important. You can, just because you gave us a pay stub 30 days ago and you took a leave of absence, the week before closing, that's going to be a problem. You got to make sure you're not opening new debt. That's always a huge thing. You got to make sure that, because you're qualified based off of the debts that were on the credit report when we initially pulled it. So if you decide you're going to go out and buy furniture for this new house, and we're literally squeezing you in this little bit of a box to get you in this house, that's going to be a problem. Because like Brian mentioned earlier, we're going to find out. If you told me that you worked for 2 years and really it was 2 months out of the 2 years, it's going to find out when you can't produce the document. So do yourself a favor and let's just be honest. We're not against you. We're here to help you. Help me help you.
Hey, Becky, a real quick one about that income out there for part-time families out there. A lot of families went down to part-time income. Hey, if you have 2 years of part-time income on the same job or related job, that income could be used, but it's really key that you're able to document a solid 2 years, and you want to be making the same type of money those 2 years. So again, part-time income can be used, but you got to be on the job for 2 years in a related field and make the same kind of money. Don't make 12,000 in your part-time income 1 year and then next year a couple thousand. That's not going to be viable income. So again, use common sense a little bit. Sometimes we say it's not as common as it should be, especially in certain industries now. The underwriters are covering their butt, the old CYA. So yeah, we do ask for some weird stuff lately on mortgages. Get your documents together. If we're asking you for something, trust us. We just want to get you wrapped up as soon as possible. Brian, we're always chasing stuff in our industry, just like any of the hardworking people, whether you're a real estate agent. Hey, inspections, we've been talking about all morning. These appraisers are jammed up. Trying to get an appraisal done in 2 week time period could be very difficult. So all these things fall into the transaction and the time frame. So Brian, it's your job. You guys are psychologists. We always talk about the great real estate agents that are psychologists and doing such a fine job out there. Tell us a little bit about how you had to held it together for some families.
Yeah, life coaching.
Well, I mean, that's where you, and I keep going back to it, but that's where you have a good partner in crime, like Becky, or a good loan officer, if you have somebody else as your go-to. But so me and Becky have teamed up on a couple here this year, and we've had to kind of keep the buyers together and just kind of say, this is what we need from you. This is what we're doing. Yes, the turnaround, the appraisal turnaround times, you're right. You hit it. It's not 6 days anymore. They're coming back possibly 2 weeks, and it's maybe a week before they even get picked up and get out to the house.
That's all lenders. Brian, talk to us, baby. You're the real estate agent. You don't only do business with us. You're too busy to only be doing business with us. But is this all lenders? Is it what's out there right now? Brian,
sorry,
Brian, is that what's out there right now? Appraisals are taking 2 weeks or more. That's what we're seeing. We're hearing it from all the lenders.
Oh, appraisals are taking a long time. I mean, and it's not just, there's nothing anybody can do about it. There's so many, I think the pandemic hit and everybody got backed up. The appraisers got backed up, and they're taking a little longer to do them. They're picking up a couple more than they normally would. So the turnaround time, yes, it's, I think me and Becky just had one, and the turnaround time was like 9 days on it. And normally
I'll take that.
It's probably been done in, 4 or 5 days. So it took almost 10 days to get that turned around. But yeah, and that's not on any of us. So there's nothing we can do, but that's where, you don't put that 25, 30-day closing on the purchase agreement anymore. You have to keep that into consideration and put, 45 days out. And if we can close sooner, we can. That's just all there is to it. But as agents and lenders, there's nothing we can do about what underwriters want from you, what appraisers are doing. It's just, we're here to help them but we can't tell them, hurry this up for my client, do this, do that. We're at
I'm
the
glad, hey, everybody, I'm glad Uncle Brian has come on and he's told everybody this, because when, like, the parents, if I were to tell people title companies are taking longer, appraisals are taking longer, inspections are taking longer, they don't listen to me, but they'll listen to Uncle Brian. Uncle Brian, I am glad that you came on and told everybody this is a consumer and it is a vendor and lender advocacy show. You just did a public service announcement for the entire industry. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, a lot of mortgage guys here are going to like that news, and now they can relax a little bit. These sleepless nights of getting phone calls. When are we closing? When are we closing? We are closing as soon as that file is all set and ready to close. And I'm going to tell you, as Harry always says, everyone's always so happy at the closing. If you just have that proper disposition and you teach everyone everything that's going on in good communication, everything should work out in the end. 248-539-9797. We're getting towards the end of the show. Brian DellaPella from River Oaks Realty. Always fun to have you on, Brian. Again, if you need great real estate advice, call us at Capital Mortgage Funding. We're going to get you set up at 1-800-LOW-RATE. Not only get you set up with that strong approval letter, but we set you up with great guys like Brian DellaPella, who will take you all through everything that's involved in the transaction, whether you're selling or buying a house. It's all about communication. Salute to all the real estate agents, Mr. Glantz, who do call us back quickly, because I think communication is the key to everything. And Harry, Coach Harry, we always talk about things. We want to coach people up, but you got to be able to absorb a little about this.
You got to
done it a few times.
I think the important thing is that the communication and answering the tough questions and giving advice that is tailored to somebody's individual situation. Okay, not everybody's the same. Everybody has different circumstances, and we have to set up people for success based on their own individual set of circumstances. And we've been lucky and we've been honored. And we're really humbled by over 30 years of being in this industry, of being able to go ahead and help people buy homes, refinance homes, saving people, tens of thousands of families, saving them millions of dollars. So we're just happy that we could do it. We take it day by day, and we make sure that we set everybody individually up for success.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I can't say enough about Brian. I mean, every time he's on the show, I'm like, oh my gosh, we need you every week, because he is an advocate for you. He is the people's agent, like he's experienced enough where he's not going to put that false sense of panic in there. He's setting those proper expectations. So that way, you know what to expect and he knows to expect that something is going to come up, because something always does, because we're human and people don't know any better, because we do this for a living. So we try to kind of think ahead of time of what could possibly come up, but then there's always something. You have to plan for something to come up, like you might have a leave of absence, or maybe you put a cash deposit for the earnest money and we can't use that. I mean, so we try to do our best to kind of educate you, and someone like Brian is going to diffuse that. It's not a sense of panic. It's just, let's find the resolution. Let's not add to the problem. So we're here to help you, obviously. And like I said, I can't see enough good things about an agent like Brian DellaPella. He is really top notch.
How about that, Brian?
Hey, keep going. No,
all right, we'll keep going. We'll include you here. But, hey, want to throw it out there real quick. Of course, we're in a great opportunity now for all our families and friends. Refinance your house. Again, always a reminder from Capital Mortgage Funding. Save money at 1-800-LOW-RATE. Why? Because now mortgage rates at all-time lows. You could do that debt consolidation and pay off that toxic debt. Toxic debt, anything with 12, 13. I mean, why not? You can borrow mortgage money in the low threes, generally speaking. So why not take advantage? Again, so many families are able to consolidate their first and second mortgages, student loan debt, just these toxic credit cards. And we see so much of that out there. So salute to everyone out there who's taking advantage. And if you think you want to find out and maybe break down some numbers, be sure to call us. 1-800-LOW-RATE, the best mortgage banker. We're coming up to the end of the show here. Brian, if you got some thoughts there, just to wrap it up.
Hey, it's I love being on the show. You guys are awesome. It's still a hot market out there. If you're ready to list your house like we talked about. Do not rent right now. Call Becky, get that low interest rate. You are going to be very surprised on what you can afford. And if you're looking to buy a house right now, hook up with a good agent who's going to talk to you and talk you through all the multiple offer situations you're going to be in. And I appreciate being on.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Brian DellaPella, always River Oaks Realty. Call us at Capital Mortgage Funding. We'll give you Brian's number, get you set up the right way. Again, get that strong approval letter. Again, we want to thank everyone. 248-539-9797 if you want to call in with your last questions. And always at Capital Mortgage Funding, 1-800-LOW-RATE, the best mortgage banker. We're going to catch you next Saturday. For Harvey Freed, the entire panel, Harry Glantz, Becky Alley. We'll see you next Saturday.